Today, we have two very special authors here with us, debuting their first young adult debut novels, Allie Hazelwood and Aaron Aceves. Allie is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Love Theoretically and The Love Hypothesis, as well as a writer of peer-reviewed articles about brain science, in which no one makes out and the ever after is not always happy. Originally from Italy, she lived in Germany and Japan before moving to the US to pursue a PhD in neuroscience. When Allie is not at work, she can be found running, eating cake pops, or watching sci-fi movies with her 3 feline overlords and her slightly less feline husband. Please welcome Allie. Woo. Aaron is a bisexual Mexican-American writer born and raised in East Los Angeles. He graduated from Harvard College and received his MFA from Columbia University. His fiction has appeared in JMWW, Epiphany, and Them, among other places. He currently lives in Texas, where he serves as Early Career Provost Fellow at UT Austin. Please welcome Aaron. Awesome. All right, well, to start off, why don't I just go between the two of you, give you a chance to kind of tell everybody about your new books, new novels, and a little bit about the inspiration behind it. Aaron, you want to start us off?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Thank you to the Texas Book. You can be Vanna White with it, yeah. So thank you to the Texas Book Festival for having me. Thank you so much to Allie, who was supposed to do this alone and was like, no. And invited me, and I'm so honored. So I know you're all here for her. I get it.
Actually, his students are here, and I'm so
excited. I do have my
excited.
students here.
Hi, guys.
Or at least one of them and her friends. But
I will want to know everything.
You too.
I will want to know everything about Erin as a professor later on. So please come see me. Come see me after class.
Office hours. Right, so the book. So This Is Why They Hate Us is a story of Enrique Luna, who is a bisexual Mexican kid growing up in East LA. He has a crush on his best friend, and in order to get over his crush on him, he tries to get under someone else. And so it is like a fun, raunchy book, but there is, I think some depth to it, because you don't go your life being a queer Mexican person without encountering, all forms of bigotry. And another big part of the book is that the best friend that he's in love with, Saleem, is Palestinian American. And so I wrote this book in 2017. I made Saleem Palestinian, and I didn't sort of know at the time what would go into the research, like the history and everything. Like, I had to figure out his family tree and like when they were expelled from Palestine and everything. And so I got really tuned in to the reality of the occupation. And so, and if you may have noticed, there have been protesters around all day. I have been a part of those protests in the past. If I wasn't here, I would be with them right now. Cold outside. But it's a really important cause to me, and I just want to express my solidarity with the Free Palestine movement. And I would also like to ask that all of us take a moment of silence for the 12,000 Palestinians who have been killed by Israel. And I don't know how to start like a moment of silence, because it just kind of goes quiet kind of awkwardly. But if we could take the time right now. All right. Sorry you have to follow that, Allie, but I think it was important.
I second everything Erin said, except the writing of the book, which I did not write. I wish, because I love this book so much. Quique is one of my, I have so much love for him in my heart, because he's so chaotic and so relatable, and he's the type of character that you're like, oh, so what it feels like inside my head is not just inside my head. It's actually something that other people feel. So I highly recommend this book to anyone. It's a YA book, but I think it's kind of ageless book. Ageless feels weird. It's for all ages.
You don't have to hold it the whole time.
Young adult people.
My book, actually, Erin was like, I have a copy of your book for you to show, and then I forgot it backstage. We're doing great here.
You guys already bought it, though. It's fine.
A very good chess player who has not been playing chess for a couple of years because of a bunch of things that have happened to her. And when she accidentally defeats the #1 chess player in the world without really wanting to and without knowing who she's playing against, she ends up being sucked into the world of competitive and professional chess once again. And then she falls in love and, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's my first YA. I hope you guys like it.
Awesome. Well, Allie, speaking of your debut YA novel, you are well known primarily for writing contemporary adult romance. I'm curious, did you notice any specific challenges when adapting to write to a younger audience?
So the writing part wasn't really that different, and I think it's mostly because I just really wanted to tell this story, and I didn't set out to write a YA, but then just kind of while I was plotting the story, I realized that Mallory and Nolan had to be young because of the nature of competitive chess, and because, it's very much, the book is very much Mallory's story. It's a romance, but it's very much the story of her figuring herself out and deciding what she wants to do and what she wants to be. So I needed her to be 18, and I needed her to be young. And then talking with my agent was like, I think this is a YA book. Let's position it as a YA book. So the writing part wasn't really that hard, but during editing, I think the problem is that, well, it's not the problem, but like when you write YA, you want to be intentional about it. Like you want, and I absolutely do not think that like all YA should be sanitized. That's not like, I don't think. I absolutely think that young adults should be able to read books that actually reflect the issues that they are dealing with. So there's that. But you also want to be a little bit careful in terms of what messages you're putting out and like how you are dealing with things. And so, the editing process was definitely different than for adult books. You're like, oh, I'll just put a tentacle in this book and no one will care. For YA, you want to think about it. When that someone who's 14 might pick up the book, you're like, okay, so what would I want them to read? When I was 14, I was reading like V.C. Andrews' Flowers in the Attic, and it was deeply traumatizing. So and now look at how I have become as a person. So that kind of stuff.
Was it hard to get in the mindset of an 18-year-old?
I don't know. I mean, I would. It didn't feel hard to me. I don't know how realistic it actually sounds, but like, I feel like I am constantly on the verge of the rest of my life, and I feel like I truly, I know that I am not an 18-year-old, but like, I really. One of the things that I love about writing YA is that if you're that age, you feel very big emotions, and everything is a matter of life or death. And I kind of feel like that still, so I would guess that I just kind of harnessed my emotional instability into writing this book.
I love it. So, Erin, which kind of leads into your question, your book tackles many complicated and some might argue very mature themes, such as desire, struggles with sexuality, depression, anxiety, mental health struggles. How important was it to you to write this novel for young adult and teen audiences?
Yeah, so I mean, when I started writing the book, I kind of just had this voice in my head in a hopefully stable way, where I just heard this kid's inner monologue, and I just kind of wrote it down. And then as I was writing it, I realized I was writing this for 17-year-old me. And then I finished the book, and then you go through the editing process and everything, and you start thinking about your audience. And then I realized, my publisher was like, this is 14 and up. And I wondered, like, to me, this is a rated R movie. This is a bi-Latino Superbad, with, some more complex topics. And so I was like, is that appropriate for a 14-year-old? And then I thought about me at 13, having these feelings, and feeling like, we're in a church. It's so weird to be talking about this in a church. But like at 13, I was going to church, and my pastor was like, if you're gay, you're going to hell. And I was sitting there like, well, I'm not gay because I like girls, so I should be able to skate into heaven, right? But knowing that like I did have an attraction to men, and I was, again, thinking about certain things, and I was like, honestly suicidal, and praying to God, and nothing was changing. And then feeling like, then I would ask him like to take me, I wanted to die at 13. And I thought he could have used this book. And so I was like, yes, it is appropriate for those young kids who are lost and don't have anyone to talk to. And then seeing it, banned, and I've seen it's called a request for reconsideration form, where a concerned parent will fill it out and be like, this is why it should not be, this is why I hate it. The name of my book is This Is Why They Hate Us. That was a pun. But they would take all the quotes from the book out of context, and then I read them and I was like, am I like a weirdo? Why did I do this? And then I realized again, for that 13-year-old kid who thought every single desire that he had made him worthy of death. So like Ali was saying, it's about being intentional, but also acknowledging the realities of being a teenager and being there for those kids at this pivotal age.
Awesome, very important. Going back to what I asked Ali as well, I'm curious. This is your first big novel to be published, your debut. Have you always kind of gravitated towards young adult audiences, or is that something you kind of envision going forward as well?
Well, this is my joke every time. I wrote my first YA book when I was a YA. I was 18 in college, writing my version of Mean Girls, which is my favorite movie. It was called Bro, which is such a great title, but in my head I would call it Mean Guys because it's kind of the same plot, right? But I wrote that book, started when I was 18, finished it when I was 21, and then tried to get an agent for it, didn't. Graduated college, didn't even think about it. I was like, I'm writing another high school story. Wrote that, tried to get an agent, couldn't. And then I was in the middle of a third book, trying to finish it, again, high school, because I really love high school movies. I've mentioned 20 already. But, again, when I heard Quique's voice, I was like, that's a 17-year-old kid. He's in bed, he's staring at the popcorn ceiling, thinking about, his desires and everything. And so for me, it wasn't, I didn't even think about the fact that it was YA. I just kept, and that was what I was reading too, Ari and Dante, More Happy Than Not, a lot of classics, and I was like, I want my first book to be YA. Now I work on other stuff. I've published short stories, and I want to move into other spaces, but I don't think I would ever leave YA. I want to come back to it.
Awesome. One of the things I noticed with both of your novels was the decision to include queer main characters as well as side characters. Ultimately, however, I think each of your main characters' queerness played different roles throughout the storylines. Why do you think that queer representation is so important in the young adult genre, and what role did it play in your respective books? Ali, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's very closely related to what Erin was saying. So right now, we are seeing all these books that have queer representation, or really any sort of representation. I have a very good friend of mine, Susan Lee. She was telling me that her books are currently being banned because they have Asian people on the cover. So that's where we're at. And this means that there is obviously a concerted effort to deprive teenagers of any sort of representation that they might find that would actually encourage them and tell them that they are not alone and that it's okay to be and to feel and to want what they want. So, it's really, to me, it's just a matter of like writing what feels right to me, and try to make it sound like it can be a relatable and in certain cases positive experience. Like Mallory is 18, but like Mallory likes sex. She has a sex life. This is something that is, very relatable to me, the idea of a sexually active 18-year-old. Not that everyone has to be. There is another 20-year-old in the book who's not, like Nolan isn't, but the idea is like, what kind of, can we show certain behaviors and just have people, again, I really don't necessarily think that, I want to be careful in what I'm saying because I don't think that YA books should be, let's show people what good behavior is, or like, I don't think they should be seen as instruction manuals, but I definitely want people to be able to look at different spectrums of behaviors and be like, this exists. It's not just in my head. It's not just me. Other people are out there doing that. So to me, that's why, for me, I think.
So thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, when Ali said spectrum, like full spectrum of queerness, right? And that means, gay, bi, pan, whatever, like queerness manifests differently for people. People expect bisexuals to be like 50% men, 50% women, but people skew different ways, and it's not just about men and women in the binary. And also, so for a long time I was like watching gay stuff, and I was kind of like, I relate to that. Oh, I don't relate to that because I was bi. My experience wasn't reflected in completion. And so to me, it's about like representing like all the letters in the alphabet mafia, and also about with my race and everything too, my ethnicity, like being Mexican. It's like, okay, okay, this guy's white and bi, but like again, I'm not seeing me in totality. So then I was like, I will write the book that is that, and put too much of myself in it, and have people ask me awkward questions sometimes. Not you, but other people. But yeah, I think it's about the variety and the diversity of the queer experience.
Awesome, that's lovely. I think it's great. Ali, I really loved with the queer representation. It's just a fact, As opposed, I love both of the ways you guys approach it. And Aaron, it's a plot device. The struggle with the sexuality is one of the main plot. But yeah, so that representation is in both. So it's very cool. Another pattern I noticed reading both y'all's novels, you both address this thing, it's called a situational predicament. It's known as stereotype threat. I know, Ali, you actually did your undergraduate thesis on stereotype threat. Can you give everyone in the audience, especially younger folks in the audience, just kind of a brief explanation of kind of what that is and how it applies to your book?
Yeah, so I'm actually just gonna explain you through an example. I think it's in the author's note as well.
Yes, it's in the author's note.
And there's also a character that talks about it, like it's one of those dialogue scenes where you have like 2 paragraphs and a character is explaining something to someone else, and you're like, oh, will people notice that this dialogue is like 17 lines? So sorry about that. But what happens? A stereotype threat basically is the idea that if you are part of a group that is usually considered to have difficulties in a certain field, your performance in that field is going to be affected when people bring up the stereotype. So an example is this study that actually my undergraduate advisor did back in Italy. And it's actually one of the reasons I was so interested in chess. The idea is that they would have chess players play games online, women chess players, and they would play sometimes against men and sometimes against women. And what they found, and they didn't know who they were playing against, and what they found was that if the women knew that they were playing against men, they were more likely to lose than if they didn't know it. And this is because there is a very strong stereotype that women are not as good as men in chess, generally. And this is just one example, and there's also a matter of intersectionality, like Aaron was saying. So then, for example, women in STEM are considered to be less good than men, but then if you look at like women of color in STEM, that's even more of an issue. And I'm talking about the stereotypes. I'm not talking about whether they're actually good or not. So that was just something that I really wanted Mallory, the main character, to have to kind of grapple with. But Mallory is a little bit external, and that is because she wasn't really in the field. She wasn't really playing chess growing up, and so she kind of somehow escape the stereotype. And I think that's kind of something that she talks about in the book, and she acknowledges that the reason why she's so good and she's not as anxious about playing against men is that she didn't grow up thinking that men were better at chess. And I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Anyway, you got it what it is.
It's your event. Like, you could talk as long as you want. Yeah, so Quique loves his metaphors. There's like, at one point he tries to explain his bisexuality with desserts. At one point...
Tiramisu and tres leches.
Tiramisu versus tres leches. And cake in general. He likes his metaphors, and so I kind of take, the idea of stereotype threat, which, like, is that my phone?
That's my phone.
Okay,
That's my phone.
cool.
You're good.
So
You guys, these chairs are so high, and
I've been terrified I'm going to fall through it because I'm not a light man. But so stereotype threat, like the way I took it, like the way I learned about it was in psych in high school, and it's like black and brown people, like when they take the SAT, they're like, I'm not going to do well on this, so then they don't do well on this. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But Quique took that, and me, and took that and was sort of like applied it to bisexuality, where I'm constantly told that I can't be attracted. Right, and so Quique talks about this. He's like, it's kind of like, I'm so terrified of other people being right about me that I, again, self-sabotage and like keep myself from something that I know I want, but question too much.
Right. Awesome. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And I love that we got to talk about Allie's undergraduate thesis.
it was approximately 75 years ago.
So I'm curious, going forward, Aaron, I kind of asked you this. Allie, do you foresee yourself
I want to write a YA if it feels right, and I have a good idea for a YA, and right now I don't have one. I just feel like, Mallory's story was kind of perfect for the genre. I'm not saying I'm not gonna write more YAs, but like, it has to be the right one.
I got you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for now, I don't know. I'm waiting to see if there is something that I really want to write and that I really think would be perfect for the YA space.
So what is
One is a paranormal romance about a marriage of convenience between a vampire and a werewolf. You guys.
I don't think I've told you this, but it comes out on my birthday. February
6th?
6th, yeah. I
Did
think
you
that's
know-
kismet. Yeah.
You guys, did you know that your birthday is International Werewolf Day? I didn't know. My publicist randomly found out like 3 weeks ago, and she emailed me just for that. She's like, "Did you know?" In the subject of the email, that so like I envy your birthday so much now.
You can have it. If it means
You
that
can
much
have
to you.
December 1st. Let's just switch. You.
I love December 1st. That's such a beautiful date.
It's fine.
Sorry, but I interrupted.
No, yeah. I love this. I just love this. Yeah, anyway, it comes out on National Werewolf Day, or International, I don't know, and on Aaron's birthday. I get it.
Ignore me.
I get it. We're struggling up here. I had to write many STEM rom-coms to convince my publisher to let me write that book, and I have no regrets. And then I have another STEM romance that comes out in the summer. I don't know what. I don't know when, and I don't know if the date has been announced yet. Yeah, that's it. And then, yeah, we'll see.
Aaron, what do you have going on that you can talk about?
A lot of water on me. So, my book on the floor. I'm just very honest about a lot of things, probably too much. But so my publisher rejected my option for my second book, which was about high school journalism. So I will have to write more of that and then send it to another publisher. It'll work out, maybe, I don't know. But I also, like I said, I write short stories and I have a collection. And then the thing I'm working on now that I'm very excited about is a book for adults, but it's about. I hate when it gets all autobiographical and it's like, no, it's not me, I swear, but it is. It's a book called, for now, it's called Coming of Age, and it's about a young adult author who goes back to the small town where he grew up for his 10th high school reunion and meets his ex-best friend, who is now a famous actor, and sets out to recreate everything he's written about in his young adult books that he didn't get to do in high school. And so that I have to, I'm not doing NaNoWriMo because I started in October, but I am trying to finish it very quickly and send it out and be like, I need a book deal. I want to know something's coming out soon.
That sounds amazing.
Well, thank you. You can blurb it.
Yeah, I would. If you need, yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. Again, publishing. I mean, if you're not Ellie Hazelwood, publishing is so unpredictable. Everyone's always going to want your books, and for good reason. But I'm just we'll see what happens.
Awesome. And last but not least, very important question. We were talking about this on the way over to the site. Do you guys think Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce will stay together? Allie?
I want to believe. I have decided to take this day by day. I know what Aaron thinks, but
I'm a cynic. I don't think they're gonna last, but I think they're gonna have a great time. I think it's gonna be a really fun, cool, creative, generative experience for the two of them.
guys, think of the album. Think of the album.